What's up, Raptors fans? Welcome to the Warriors Report. The Raptors have now lost 3 straight games, and there has been a lot of finger pointing towards Fred VanVleet. And now the recent trend has been Pascal Siakam. But I'm here to tell you that none of those players are the reason why the Raptors are losing. There is a much bigger and deeper issue, which no one is realizing. And I'm here to break that down in today's video. So if you want to find out what that deeper and bigger issue is with the Raptors, make sure to like this video. If you guys want to hit the subscribe button for a lot more Raptors content, including in-depth analysis, latest news, rumors, trades, mock trades as well, that'd be much appreciated. And with that being said, let's get into today's video. Now, the shout out for today's video goes to Fax, who was, believe it or not, the only person to answer my previous trivia question correctly, which was which of these players has had the most All-Star selections. A lot of you guys said Vince Carter. Believe it or not, it is actually Chris Bosh who has had the most All-Star selections. So, Alfax, thank you so much for supporting the channel with your likes and comments. It is very much appreciated. And let's talk a little bit about the Raptors now. Now, when you take a look at the Raptors starting five of Pascal Siakam, Scottie Barnes, OG Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr., and Fred VanVleet, the issue there is clearly not talent. There is obviously a lot of talent there, but the reason the Raptors are really struggling right now with this lineup is the fact that there is no identity. And also because I mentioned this in my previous video when I said one of these players needs to be moved to the bench, but a lot of you guys were saying that we need to put the best five together, and that doesn't necessarily always translate to winning. I'm going to use the Warriors as an example here. When you take a look at the Warriors roster, and they're the top team in the league right now, it's not that Klay Thompson's back. It's not that Stephen Curry is averaging 50 points, although Stephen Curry is going off. Don't get me wrong. It's the fact that they have surrounded Stephen Curry with the right pieces. And that is what I believe the Raptors are really lacking right now. You have a group of talented players, but you don't necessarily have the roles or the fit there. Now, I'm not going to point fingers and say it's Pascal or Fred or Gary or whoever. That's not what I'm here to do. And that is not what this video is about. But I'm here to talk about the fact that the roles are not assigned. You don't know who's going to be taking the most shots every single game. It seems to be a different player. Now, obviously, we know Pascal will eventually get into form, and he should be the leading guy on the starting lineup. But when you take a look at, for example, let's use the Raptors 2019 championship team. When we use them as an example, you had Kawhi Leonard, who was a top dog. You had Kyle Lowry, who was a point guard. And then you had Pascal Siakam, who was sometimes their second or third scorer, depending on how much they used him and against what matchup. But then you had players like Marc Gasol and Danny Green that really complemented these three other players. And that is what we're really lacking right now. I think with the Raptors roster, and it's particularly essentially the starting lineup, the big issue is the fact that every one of these players wants the ball, and you see a lot of isolation plays in return when you see Pascal Siakam going one-on-one, and the next play down is Fred VanVleet taking a three, or OG Anunoby trying to create a shot of his own, and then it's Scottie Barnes. This is why there's a lot of issue with the starting lineup. We don't really have an identity for these roles. There's Gary Trent Jr. who needs shots. There's Fred VanVleet who needs shots. There's Scottie Barnes, OG, and of course Pascal Siakam as well. So every single player needs shots, and we need players. And again, guys, I'm not saying trade these players away, but the decision has to be made that one of these players needs to move to the bench and have someone like Cam Birch in the starting lineup who doesn't necessarily need the ball in his hands. He can take 2-3 shots and he'll still play really well. He can take 7-8 shots and he'll still play really well. That's the big issue with the Raptors. What I'm noticing right now is we don't really have that role. We need to identify the roles of each single player. And unfortunately, I've said this before and I'll say it over and over again, it's identity and roles, and we need to move one of these players to the bench. And that is the big issue I'm seeing with the Raptors right now. And when you look at past championship teams as well, I want to go a little bit further into this and dissect this. Now, when you look at the Lakers, for example, who won the championship a few seasons ago, you had LeBron James, you had Anthony Davis, then you had some really good complementary players in Rajon Rondo, you had Dwight Howard as well as some other players as well who really fit the mold of that team. And that is what the Raptors need. They need some veteran presence as well, but they also need to complement the starting lineup. The talent is clearly there. We've seen the Raptors compete with some really good teams this season and outright dominate some really good teams as well. But the Raptors, now that they have Pascal Siakam back, and I'm not saying trade Pascal, this doesn't necessarily mean we need to trade them, but I definitely think they need to surround them with the right pieces. You need to have one of those Danny Green type of players that will sit in the corner at three, and he'll make those three if you need them, and he'll also play some great defense. We can't have 5 players who all want the ball and who all need to take 10, 15 plus shots a game. That is the big issue I'm personally seeing with the Raptors right now. And that is something I think that's going to have to be identified throughout not only this season, but long term as well. If that's whether that's through a trade, maybe we need to package a starter along with some bench pieces to acquire a center. There's been a lot of talk about Pascal Siakam being traded. I don't think that's the case. I don't want to throw any players' names out there because it's still so early into the season. But if the Raptors continue to use the small ball lineup, I just don't see how it works. And we've seen the struggles a little bit as well in the paint as well. When you see teams just attacking the basket, although Raptors have the length to switch, they can switch on any players. The big issue is with the small ball lineup is that you just don't have a paint presence. And I really do feel like we need to play a center out there, whether that's Kem Birch or Precious Achiuwa. We need to play a center. We need to move one of these players to the bench. So I think that is the big issue with the Raptors. But I do want to hear from you guys. Do you guys agree with me? Do you disagree with what my take is here with the Raptors and how they really need to switch this lineup around? And again, I know people can say it's a very small size sample because we've only seen Pascal Siakam for 2 games back. But you could also relate this to last season as well when we had Kyle Lowry coming back from the injury and we had Gary Trent Jr. and Nick Nurse was kind of put in a position where he didn't know what to do. And he ultimately, we know, put Gary Trent Jr. on the bench. So it's hard to make these decisions, but those decisions need to be made. I think you need a few complementary players. You can't have every player in your starting lineup. And I'll repeat this 10 times if I have to, guys. I know it seems like a broken record, but you can't have 5 players in your starting lineup that all want the ball. I think this team would definitely benefit. Again, I'm not throwing any shade at Fred VanVleet, but someone like a pass-first point guard, someone like a Ricky Rubio. And no, I'm not saying the Raptors should replace Fred VanVleet with Ricky Rubio, but Fred VanVleet, obviously, he needs his shot as well as some other players as well. I think the Raptors are a very talented bunch. It's just now surrounding the roster with nice pieces, right? For example, again, I'll go back to some of the previous, actually not even previous seasons. This was a while ago, but the Raptors had Rudy Gay, DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry. The talent was clearly there. But once Rudy Gay was traded off to the roster, it allowed DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry to really blossom into the players we've seen them become over the years. And it's just sometimes it's about surrounding the roster with good complementary pieces. So that is my take on why I believe the Raptors roster is currently struggling. Again, you could argue it's early into the season, but I've used past examples. I want to hear from you guys, though. Do you disagree with me? Do you agree with me? Let me know in the comment section below. And as always, guys, there is a trivia question for today. And that trivia question is, the most points scored by the Raptors in a single game came against which team? Is it A, Sacramento Kings, B, Boston Celtics, C, Brooklyn Nets, or D, Washington Wizards? So whoever answers this question correctly first gets a shout out in my next video, guys. So make sure to let me know the correct answer in the comment section below. And if you guys are still watching this video, guys, thank you so much for watching and have a great day. The only one to get the answer correctly when the question, my last trivia question was, who has had the most 3 games in a row? There has been a lot of finger pointing. While some have in a row, the Raptors on a 3-game losing streak. And during these 3-game losing streak, 3 straight games, and there has been a lot of finger pointing. Some people have pointed to Fred VanVleet, while others have been pointing the finger towards Fred Pascal.